I woke up because someone was trying to close my eyes, like a corpse. For a second, I didn't move. I let their fingers graze my lashes, gently, almost respectfully, as if they were performing the final act in a world where I no longer existed. Then the rest of me caught up. My lungs burned. My arm throbbed like someone had driven a hot nail through it. The air tasted of antiseptic and rust. I wasn't dead. Which, honestly, felt like a disappointing plot twist. I opened my eyes. The ceiling above me was concrete, sweating moisture like it was trying to cry. A flickering fluorescent light buzzed overhead, stuttering in and out, giving the room a haunted underwater feel. Somewhere close, metal clinked. Somewhere far, someone screamed. A hospital, but not the legal kind. I shifted on the cold metal table. My shirt was half torn, soaked with dried blood. My boots were gone. My throat felt scraped raw. And someone in the room, I couldn't see them yet, said my least favorite name. Lynn is awake. Get the sedative, Lynn. Right. That was me. Or at least the version of me I pretended to be. Pretending was a survival instinct by now. Like breathing. Or running. I forced myself to sit up. Every muscle protested. Careful, someone muttered without turning. Patience disoriented. Patient. I almost laughed. The last thing I was, or ever wanted to be, was someone's patient. I scanned the room. 2 doors. 1 cracked window. Too small to climb through but big enough to throw something out of. 4 metal trays. 1 monitor. 0 weapons. I didn't need a weapon. I needed a plan. And maybe a miracle. The door creaked. My heart skipped. Heavy footsteps, slow and controlled, entered the room. Not the frantic shuffle of the underground nurses. Not the quick light steps of a courier or guard. Measured. Powerful. Danger wrapped in calm. The smell hit next. Cold metal, gun oil, rain-soaked asphalt. No, that wasn't possible. I looked up. And time punched me in the mouth. He stood in the doorway like a bad memory manifesting into flesh, tall, broad, shouldered, wearing black tactical gear that clung to him like a second skin. There was a deep line between his brows, carved there by years of worry, rage, or maybe just existing in this world too long. His eyes froze me in place. A storm. Sharp, icy, furious. 3 years. 3 years I thought he was dead. He stepped forward once, slow, deliberately. Lynn, the nurse stammered. You need to stay. But the man in the doorway didn't look at her. He looked at me. Kai, he said. My breath stopped. Nobody had used my real name in years. I swallowed. My voice cracked as it climbed out of me. You're dead. He didn't blink. His jaw barely moved. No, he said quietly. You are. A chill crawled up my spine. The room shrank, the air thickened, and suddenly it felt just like the moment I disappeared 3 years ago. Bright lights, cold hands, something ripped away. I slid off the table. He stepped closer. My heartbeat turned into a drum against my ribs. Fight or flee. I chose flee. I grabbed the nearest metal tray and launched it at his face. He tilted his head a fraction, too fast, too practiced, and it clattered uselessly against the wall. I ran. The door slammed open under my shoulder. Alarms wailed. Nurses shouted. Boots thundered down the hall. My legs barely held me, but fear made up for muscle. I sprinted into the corridor, weaving between carts of medical supplies. Behind me, his voice cut through everything. Kai. I didn't look back. The hall split in 2. I picked left, always pick left, and slipped on the blood-slick floor, hitting the wall hard enough to see stars. I pushed off it, gasping, searching for an exit. Almost there. A hand clamped around my wrist, pulling me to a stop. Not rough, not gentle, unavoidable. I spun around and stared straight into that storm again. Royce. His name hit me harder than his grip. Of course it was him. Of course he wasn't dead. Death wouldn't dare take someone who glared like that. You need to let me go, I rasped. I'm not here to let you do anything. He tugged me closer, adjusting his stance so I wouldn't collapse. My injured arms screamed, but I refused to make a sound. He looked me over, from the wound to the bruise on my ribs, and something like fury flickered in his eyes. Not at me. For me. Walk, he ordered. Bossy as ever, I muttered, stumbling as the room swayed. Missed that. He didn't rise to the bait. which irritated me more than if he had. He half guided, half dragged me down the hall. People tried to block him. He didn't even break stride. One look from him, and they pressed themselves to the walls. Sirens blared. The whole building seemed to shake. I tripped, and for a second I leaned fully into him. Warmth, strength, familiarity. I hated how easy it felt. We burst out into a parking lot. A black SUV sat with the engine running. "Get in," he said. "Why?" I shot back. "Planning to resurrect me again?" He opened the door, ignoring me. I climbed in anyway. Mostly because my legs were giving up, not because I was agreeing. The moment I sat down, the adrenaline drained out of me. My head spun. My vision blurred. Royce got in beside me. Slammed the door. The sirens faded behind us as we tore out of the lot. I tried to keep my eyes open. Tried to stay angry. Tried to stay sarcastic. But exhaustion won. As the darkness dragged me down, one last thought curled in my mind, bitter and reluctant. Idiot. I didn't ask you to come back. I wasn't ready for you. Then everything went black. I woke up slowly, drifting out of sleep like someone swimming upward, through warm water, and immediately hated how comfortable it felt. The sheets were soft. Too soft. The room was dim and quiet. Too quiet. The air smelled faintly of coffee and metal. A combination that made my stomach twist with a memory I wasn't ready to face. I sat up fast, instantly regretting the movement when my shoulder flared with pain. A low groan escaped me. The shirt I wore wasn't mine. Clean, soft cotton, a size too big. The pants were the same. Someone had changed me. Someone had put me in this bed. Someone had tucked the blankets around me. I didn't need guessing skills to figure out who. The bedroom was painfully neat. Gray walls, a wooden floor that gleamed like it had opinions about dirt, furniture placed with precision. Even the pillow looked like it had been arranged by someone who ironed for sport. I swung my legs off the bed and stood carefully. The room tilted once, then held steady. Voices weren't echoing. No nurses. No alarms. Just the faint clatter of something in another room. I stepped out into the hallway, and froze at the sight of him. Royce stood in the kitchen, back to me, a kettle steaming on the stove. The morning light poured through the enormous windows behind him, outlining his silhouette in pale gold. He looked out of place there. Too large for the quiet space. Too sharp for the warm light. For a big, terrifying alpha, who could break bones with one hand, he looked domestic. Which was honestly disturbing. "Is this a hallucination?" I said, leaning against the doorframe. "Or did I actually survive just to see you make tea?" He glanced over his shoulder. Not startled. Not surprised. Just acknowledging me. "Kai," he said. "Sit." "You're still recovering." "You're cooking," I said. "I'm already in shock. Sitting might kill me." He didn't smile. Of course he didn't. Royce smiling would violate several natural laws. I dropped into a chair anyway. More because my legs were wobbly than because he told me to. The kitchen, like the bedroom, was brutally tidy. Everything arranged at right angles. Everything clean. Panoramic windows showed the city outside. Early morning, pale sky, towers cutting into the light. "So," I said, "whose house is this?" "Let me guess. Yours. Because it's too neat to belong to anyone with a heartbeat." "It's mine," he confirmed. "You were bleeding out. I brought you here." "No kidding." I thought maybe the healing fairies carried me. His eyes narrowed slightly. A sign I'd landed a good hit. He poured hot water into a mug, added tea, placed it in front of me. I didn't touch it. He pulled out a chair across from me and sat down. The distance between us felt both too small and too big. "You need food," he said. "And rest." "Your arm." "My arm is fine." "It isn't." "Your concern is touching," I said flatly. "Truly. But completely unnecessary." He inhaled slowly, patience wearing thin. "You were in an illegal clinic. Shot. Unconscious." "If I hadn't..." "I didn't ask you to rescue me." "No," he said, voice low. "You didn't..." The silence after that stretched. Thick. Heavy. I broke it first because I hate silence more than I hate bleeding. "So what's the plan, Commander? Keep me here? Lock me up? Teach me how to brew artisanal tea?" "Kai." "Don't worry," I said lightly, standing. "I won't make this awkward. I'm leaving before you get emotionally attached." He didn't move. Which meant, he expected this. I crossed the kitchen, went to the living room window, and tested the latch with one hand. It clicked open. He really should have known better. I swung my leg over the sill and stepped onto the balcony, then hopped neatly onto the neighboring one. The pain in my arm screamed, but adrenaline drowned it out. I crouched low, ready to slip into the stairwell. A shadow shifted beside me. Royce was already there, leaning against the railing, arms crossed, looking like he'd been waiting for me specifically to be stupid. "How?" I started. "You're predictable." "I am not predictable." He raised one eyebrow. "Okay," I conceded. "Maybe I'm a little predictable. But you still don't have the right to chase me." He finally pushed off the railing. His presence filled the small space instantly. "I don't have the right?" he asked quietly. "That's what I said." "I have memory," he answered. 3 years of it. "That doesn't make you my guardian." "No," he agreed softly. "But it makes me someone who refuses to watch you die again." The words punched air from my lungs. "You're not my anything," I whispered. "That," he said, stepping closer, "is a lie." I swallowed hard. Something cold and unfamiliar curled low in my stomach. Then he said it. The thing that turned that cold into ice. "Kai," he murmured. "You don't smell anything, do you?" I froze. He watched my face change. He saw it all. The flicker of confusion, the fear behind it. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. He took a small step closer. "You don't smell me," he said. Not angry. Not accusing. Just stating a truth that shouldn't exist. And just like that, every joke, every mask, every survival reflex slipped for a heartbeat. Because he was right. I didn't smell him. I didn't smell anything. And that terrified me more than waking up on a metal table with a bullet wound ever could. If Royce's house wasn't a cage, it was doing an incredible impression of one. I spent the morning testing its limits. Not subtly. Subtly was for people who wanted to stay. I wanted the opposite. The living room was all clean lines and cold colors, furniture arranged with military precision. No cameras. I checked. Twice. The bathroom was spotless enough to perform open-heart surgery in. The balcony overlooked a quiet courtyard, too high to jump, too open to climb down, too exposed for comfort. Everywhere I looked, I found order. Control. His. And every time I glanced back toward the kitchen, where Royce was reading something on his tablet, his eyes flicked to me. Not suspicious. Not possessive. Just tracking me. As if making sure I didn't collapse or spontaneously combust. I hated how steady it made me feel. So naturally, I tried to make him uncomfortable. I sauntered into the living room with a whistle, deliberately crossing his line of sight. I leaned against the wall, folded my arms and gave him an exaggerated wink. Nothing. I moved closer, close enough that most alphas would have tensed from instinct alone, asserting dominance through posture or scent. Royce didn't move, but his breath caught for a fraction of a second. Victory? No. Not with him. I pushed further, sat on the kitchen counter swinging my legs, acting like I belonged in his space. My foot brushed his arm as he passed me to reach the cabinet. He froze. Not the reaction I expected. Not anger, not territorial heat, just a sudden stillness, as if I'd startled a wild animal rather than an alpha. "Comfortable?" he asked dryly. "Very," I said, thinking of staying forever. Or at least until the tea runs out. He didn't look at me, but the muscle in his jaw jumped. I grinned. Provoking him felt familiar, easy, like slipping into an old fight stance. But every time I tried, he refused to play back. He moved around me with the careful calm of someone handling explosives, which only made me want to poke harder. I accidentally dropped the spoon he handed me. I hummed tunelessly when he tried to read. I followed him onto the balcony, standing so close our shoulders brushed. Nothing. Just his breath, steady and controlled, and the faintest tremble beneath it. It was maddening. By afternoon I had enough data to confirm 2 things. Royce would not act like a normal alpha. I did not know what to do with that. So I defaulted to survival, escape. The opportunity presented itself when Royce went to take a call. He left his keys on the coffee table, a mistake he absolutely did not usually make. I stared at them for 5 seconds. 5 seconds too long. 5 seconds, just enough. I snatched them, palmed them, and ducked into the hallway. I moved fast, down the stairs, 2 flights at a time, ignoring the throb in my arm. At the first landing, I slipped on a courier's abandoned jacket hanging over a railing. Inspiration struck. 2 minutes later, I emerged from the stairwell wearing the jacket, hood up, posture slouched. I even grabbed an empty box from the lobby to complete the disguise. The security guard barely glanced at me. Perfect. I reached the front door. Freedom tasted like recycled air and cheap linoleum. My fingers brushed the handle. Kai. Just my name. Soft. Not a command, not a threat, not even angry. But it hit me like a tranquilizer dart. I turned. Royce stood halfway down the hallway, breathing hard. The first sign he hadn't been as calm as he pretended. His hair was slightly mussed, his shirt untucked on one side. For someone who was always collected, that disarray felt intimate. You're unbelievable, I muttered. You stole my keys. I borrowed them. You were leaving. I shrugged. Old habits. Something flickered across his face, frustration, hurt, maybe exhaustion. I couldn't read him anymore. Not the way I used to. He closed the distance between us in a few slow steps. You can't keep doing this, he said. Why not? Not like you own me. His jaw tightened. I never said I did. Then stop chasing me. I'm not chasing you. Really? I scoffed. Could have fooled me. His voice dropped. I'm trying to make sure you stay alive. I opened my mouth with a ready comeback, something sharp and deflecting. But he cut me off with something else entirely. You didn't react. I frowned. To what? To my voice, he said quietly. To my scent. To proximity. To pressure. He stepped closer. Close enough I could count the flecks of silver in his irises. Close enough that any Omega would have instinctively shifted, inclined their head, lowered their gaze. I didn't. I stood perfectly still. Royce exhaled slowly, eyes narrowing. That's not normal, Kai. The world tilted. My fingers tightened on the cardboard box. My breath hitched. The first real crack in my mask. I moved to joke it off. To laugh too loudly. To throw words like smoke bombs. Well, I said with forced brightness, normal's overrated. Kai. Just my name. This time softer. Sadder. I swallowed. And for the first time since I woke up in that clinic, I didn't know what to say. So I did what I always do when cornered. I hid behind sarcasm. Look at you, I said too loudly, too brightly, analyzing me like a lab report. Isn't that cute? But my hands shook. And he saw. He always saw. I waited until evening, the hour when sunlight fades, but the night hasn't fully claimed the streets yet. The city was washed in gold, then shadow, the kind of in-between light where you can slip through unnoticed. Perfect for running. Royce had gone to take another call in his office, door closed but not locked. Rookie mistake. Or maybe he trusted me just enough to forget what I was, someone who always had one foot out the door. I padded to the front entrance, glanced once over my shoulder, then knelt by the keypad. The code was an 8-digit pattern. Secure but not immune to someone who'd survived on illegal circuits and backroom fights. I popped off the panel with a flick of my nails and rewired the internal override. 10 seconds. I'd done it in 3 before, but adrenaline makes your fingers sloppy. The lock clicked. The sweet sound of potential chaos. I slipped out through the fire escape and into the alley, the metal stairs rattling under my weight. A rush of cold air hit my face. Freedom smelled like exhaust fumes, food carts, and the distant ocean. Not that I could smell any of it, but I remembered those smells. Memory is a stubborn, cruel thing. In the shadow of the building, I pried up a loose floor tile next to the dumpster. Beneath it, a small plastic bag. My emergency stash. Rolled bills, a burner phone, a switchblade. I stuffed everything into my jacket. Royce would be furious when he learned I'd set this up days ago, but a part of him, the part that respected survival above all, would be impressed. He always did appreciate a well-executed escape plan, even when it was mine. I kept low as I crossed the courtyard. A courier was leaning against his delivery bike, scrolling on his phone. I timed it, waited for him to turn, then walked up casually. Hey, I said. He glanced up, startled. I smiled apologetically, grabbed the bike's handlebars, and shoved him lightly but firmly aside. Sorry, emergency. Hey, that's my... But I was already halfway down the street, the engine growling beneath me as I weaved into traffic. The city blurred into streaks of neon and brake lights. My injured arm ached, but the wind in my face, even if I couldn't feel the sense, gave me the illusion of freedom. I rode until the noise faded behind me, until buildings thinned into the quieter edge of the city. My hands were shaking on the handlebars by the time I reached the bridge. High, overlooking the water, silent except for the distant hum of cars. Higher. Quieter. Safe. I parked the stolen bike and walked to the railing. The water below was black glass, reflecting the lights like scattered stars. My heartbeat settled. For a moment I felt almost peaceful. You always go where it's higher and quieter. I didn't jump. But I did curse under my breath. Royce stood next to me, hands in his pockets. Posture relaxed, like he'd simply gone for a stroll. His hair was pushed back from the wind, his eyes tired but steady. How? I started. You're predictable, he said. And you weren't covering your tracks as well as you thought. I scowled. You're stalking me. No. His tone stayed level. I go where you choose to be. That threw me off more than it should have. I folded my arms, leaning back against the railing. So what, you think you know me now? His eyes met mine. Calm. Sad. Too honest. I used to... Something in my chest pulled taut. I swallowed hard. Looked away first. Mistake. It gave him room to stand closer. In the dim light, I saw details I hadn't let myself see earlier. The exhaustion from days without sleep, the bruise on his jaw from the clinic fight, the quiet resolve under his skin. For the first time since he found me, I looked at him without anger. Without the need to run. Just a man who refused to give up on a mistake he still believed was his. It terrified me. And made me feel warm. I killed the warmth immediately. You don't know me, I said sharply. Royce didn't argue. He just reached into his pocket as his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression changed. Not shock. Not fear. Something colder. Something that crawled across my skin. What? I demanded. He turned the screen toward me. A government report. 7 names. 7 Omegas marked missing, presumed dead. Classified under Project Null Instinct. And there, third on the list. Kai, Subject 0, 4K. My throat closed. You were supposed to be gone, Royce said quietly. All of you. The night wind cut through me. Not because it was cold. Because everything I feared was no longer a memory. It was real. It was hunting me. And Royce had just confirmed the one thing I'd tried hardest to forget. I wasn't the only ghost in this city. I didn't sleep that night. The knowledge of that list, the 7 missing, the 7 like me, dug into my mind like hooks, and Royce, standing beside me on that bridge with that expression, had cracked something I'd been holding shut for years. Back in the apartment, silence clung to the walls like damp. I paced my bedroom, wearing a path into the floorboards. Every heartbeat felt too loud, too sharp. Every shadow looked like someone watching. Royce noticed. Of course he noticed. He always did. He knocked once on my door and stepped inside without waiting for permission. A habit that used to annoy me. Now it just felt inevitable. You're on edge, he said quietly. No, I snapped. I'm practically doing yoga. He ignored the sarcasm, which only made me more agitated. You saw the list, he continued. You know you weren't the only one taken. Yeah, I breathed. I know. I moved to the dresser, pretending to look for something, pretending not to shake. My fingers brushed a cup left from earlier. Water, half empty, lukewarm. Royce watched me too carefully. Kai, he said slowly, when was the last time you smelled anything? My fingers tightened on the cup. He took a step toward me. Not aggressive. Not dominant. Just searching. Food. People. Me. His voice softened. When did it stop? My breath hitched. I didn't want to go there. I never wanted to go there again. Don't. I warned. Kai. Stop. I need to know. I said. When was the last time, he repeated, you felt anything an Omega should feel? The cup slipped from my hand. It shattered against the floor. The sound was thin, sharp, final. I stared at it, the clear water seeping into the cracks between tiles, the glass fragments like tiny teeth. Royce didn't move. He waited. And something inside me snapped like the cup had. You want to know? I yelled. Really? Kai. I don't remember. My voice broke on the last word. I don't remember the last time anything smelled like anything. I don't remember reacting to an alpha, or feeling pressure, or heat, or anything I'm supposed to feel. Royce flinched. Not from fear. From pain. I dragged my hands through my hair, pacing like a trapped animal. I can't be linked. I shouted. I can't be claimed or calmed or commanded. My instinct is broken. Not broken, he said firmly. Stolen. I froze. He stepped forward, voice low but hard as steel. Something was done to you. To all of you. They didn't want Omegas with free will. They wanted weapons who don't respond to control. You didn't lose your instinct. Someone took it. I pressed both hands over my face. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Then the memories hit. Cold. Blinding. Surgical. The room dimmed around me as another place, another time, swallowed me. Flashback. Bright white light. Too bright. A metal table colder than bone. Leather straps biting into my wrists. My throat raw, but no sound coming out. Figures in white coats circling around me. Subject 04K. Begin suppression sequence. Instinct baseline detected. Initiate nullification. Keep him restrained. He's sensitive to. A hand pressed something sharp into my arm. Heat flooded my veins. Then ice. I tried to speak. Tried to scream. Nothing came out. Not because I was silent. Because my voice wasn't there. I felt something rip, not in my body but deeper. A tearing sensation just beneath the skin. As if something invisible was being unhooked. One thread at a time. My vision blurred. Bond receptivity dropping. Good. Someone touched my cheek. Clinical. Detached. Kai. A voice called from far away. Not theirs. Not part of the experiment. Someone familiar. But the world dissolved before I could reach it. I came back to myself gasping. The bedroom spun. My knees buckled, and I gripped the dresser to stay upright. Royce was closer now but not touching me. Waiting for permission, or for me to fall. I couldn't tell which. Kai, he said softly. You remembered something. I laughed. A broken, empty sound. I remembered everything I wish I didn't, I whispered. He hesitated, then reached down and picked up a piece of shattered glass. Placing it carefully on the desk, his hands steady, mine trembling. I've been digging, he said. Your file wasn't erased. Just buried. He pulled his phone from his pocket, opened a document. Rows of clinical notes, stamped pages, diagrams. Project Null Instinct, he read. Subjects 1st through 7th. All Omegas. All altered. My stomach twisted. He kept reading. Objective, suppress receptive pathways, remove alpha influence, eliminate bond response. He met my eyes. Create perfect soldiers with no instinct for submission. A hollow coldness spread through me. So that's it? I whispered. That's what I am? A failed experiment? No, he said immediately. But I wasn't done. Freedom is supposed to feel good, I said quietly, voice shaking. But when you're free from everything, every connection, every bond, it stops being freedom. Royce's expression softened. It becomes a void, I finished. And the longer it's there, the harder it is to fill. He stepped closer. Not looming, not dominating. Just present. You're not empty, he said. You're alive. And whatever they stole, we can take back. I laughed weakly. You always think you can fix everything. I don't need to fix everything, he said. Just you. That should have scared me. Should have made me run. But instead, for the first time since the clinic, I didn't move at all. The next few days felt strangely suspended, like time had slowed down inside Royce's immaculate apartment. No more running. No more shouting. Just a quiet I didn't know how to hold. I didn't trust it. But I didn't run from it either. Royce cooked, which was already an adventure. The man could dismantle an armed opponent in under 3 seconds, but put him in front of a stove and suddenly, he looked like a rookie facing his first mission. On the 3rd evening he decided to make soup. Simple, he claimed. It took 40 minutes. He chopped onions with the precision of a bomb technician. And still managed to burn them. The smell hit my nose as a faint sting, memory more than scent, but I didn't comment. Okay, I did. Congratulations, I drawled from the counter. You've weaponized produce. He shot me a flat look, turning the burner down. But you're still going to eat it. Desperation makes people do strange things, I sighed. Fine, serve your carcinogenic masterpiece. When the soup was done, it was unevenly seasoned, too hot, and steaming like a chemical experiment. I took a bite. Paused. It's not bad, I admitted. Royce blinked. Then, barely, the corner of his mouth lifted. Not a smile. But the ghost of one. I pretended not to notice. The days settled into a rhythm. I shouldn't have allowed it, but exhaustion made choices for me. I learned things about him I didn't expect. He forgot to turn off the kettle at least once a day. The shrill whistle would fill the kitchen until he muttered a quiet curse and rushed to silence it. He owned 3 identical black t-shirts. 3. I opened his closet one morning and stared. "Are you running a uniform cult?" I asked. He didn't look up from his paperwork. "It saves time and personality." He ignored that. He placed utensils back in the wrong drawer. Not because he didn't know where they went, but because he wasn't paying attention. The great Commander Royce, meticulous agent, couldn't remember where the spoons lived. These small human glitches should have annoyed me. They didn't. They made him real. Not the specter from my past. Not the relentless force who always caught me. Just a man. And somehow, that was more dangerous. In return, I fell into my own patterns. The sarcasm softened. The distance didn't disappear, but it thinned. Sometimes I'd walk into the kitchen while he cooked and lean closer than necessary. Not aggressively. Not like the taunts I used before. Just close. Close enough to watch his eyelashes twitch. Close enough to see his throat work as he swallowed. And one evening when I accidentally brushed my fingers against his wrist reaching for a cup, his reaction was instant. He froze. Ears flushing red. Red. Royce, the man whose pulse didn't spike even when facing armed criminals, was blushing. I blinked at him. "What?" he asked gruffly, turning away too fast. "Nothing," I said. "Just witnessing a rare meteorological event." He pretended not to hear. I pretended not to grin. The third night, sleep wouldn't come. Not unusual. But when it finally did, it dragged a nightmare with it. Blinding white. Lights, restraints, voices naming me a code instead of a person. I woke with a gasp, drenched in cold sweat. There was a shadow in the doorway. Royce. He crossed the room without turning on the lights. The mattress dipped beside me as he sat. He didn't reach out immediately. He waited, giving me the choice. My hand trembled once before I exhaled and held it out, palm up. He took it. His fingers were warm. Steady. No pressure. No dominance. Just presence. "You're safe," he said softly. "I know," I whispered. I didn't know if it was true. But I wanted it to be. We sat like that for a long time, just breathing in the same quiet. When the trembling stopped, I looked at him in the dim glow of the street lamp outside. His face was close, closer than it had been in years. Some impulse moved me before fear could stop it. I reached up and touched his cheek. His breath caught. He didn't pull back. Didn't lean in. He stayed utterly still, as if the slightest movement would break the moment open and scatter it across the floor. I felt stubble under my fingertips. Real. Warm. Human. He swallowed. "Kai. Don't," I murmured. "Just let me." He did. He let me trace the line of his jaw, the curve of his cheek, relearning a face I thought I'd never see again. And he didn't move. Didn't interrupt. Didn't ruin it. For the first time since I woke up in that underground clinic, the cage I felt around me wasn't made of steel. It was made of choice. And I wasn't trying to break out. The calm didn't last. It never does. 3 days after the nightmare, Royce's phone buzzed at 6 a.m. He froze mid-movement, one arm in his jacket, the other holding a mug of coffee he hadn't even tasted yet. Something in his posture sharpened. I lifted my head from the couch, where I'd been pretending to sleep. "What?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just read whatever was on the screen, jaw locking tighter with every second. "That bad?" I pushed. He finally looked at me, and the look alone told me everything. "They restarted the program," he said quietly. My stomach dropped. "Project Null Instinct?" I whispered. He nodded once. "And the disappearances?" He hesitated, then continued. "They've risen. But the media's not reporting any of it." I let out a shaky breath. Of course they're hiding it. Wouldn't want the public to know their omegas are being scooped up like... "Yes," he said sharply, shutting me up. "Exactly." Something flickered outside the window. A glint of light. A reflection. Royce saw it too. He crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed the curtains, and yanked them shut. "Stay back. What did you—" He didn't speak. He moved. Fast. He checked the door, then the hallway, then the corners of the room. By the time he stepped onto the balcony, his whole body had changed, lean, lethal focus. I followed him out, ignoring the ache in my shoulder. Below, parked near the opposite building, sat a car with tinted windows. Not unusual, except for the man standing next to it, pretending to check a map while angling his phone at our balcony. My pulse spiked. Ice raced up my spine. Royce. I see him. He didn't shout. He didn't run. He simply took one step forward, and the man bolted into the car, speeding away. Royce watched until the taillights vanished. That's not good, I muttered. No, he agreed. It isn't. He didn't waste time. Within 10 minutes he had me shoved into a jacket and shoes, hustling me through the stairwell and out the back exit. It was still early, the streets quiet. A fog hung low over the city, turning everything gray and damp. Where are we going? I asked. Somewhere safe. I hate when you say that. I know. He led me 2 blocks down, past a row of shuttered shops, then pulled me behind an abandoned recycling center. A rusted metal hatch sat half buried in the ground, disguised under a blanket of debris. Royce swept it clear with one motion and lifted it. A ladder led into darkness. You have a secret bunker, I said. Of course you have a secret bunker. It's not secret, he said. Just forgotten. Like me. He paused. Just for a second. Then, get in. Under normal circumstances, I would have fought. Or at least thrown a snarky comment loud enough for the neighborhood dogs to complain. But today, I just climbed down. The bunker was small, barely a room, with cement walls and a single cot against the far side. A stack of canned food and bottled water sat neatly in one corner. A battery-powered lamp flickered on, casting soft yellow light. Royce joined me after closing the hatch. He exhaled slowly, tension leaving his shoulders but not his eyes. This is temporary, he said. I just need time to figure out who's watching us. For the first time since he dragged me out of that clinic, I didn't argue. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the list of the 7. Maybe it was the way he'd looked at me when he said they restarted the program. Whatever the reason. I sat down quietly. Royce stepped away to take a call. Low voice, clipped tone. I couldn't hear the words at first, but then the argument rose, muffled but unmistakable. Emotionally compromised. No, sir. He stays with me. I said no. Then silence. A long one. I stood in the center of the room, heart pounding, listening to the quiet hum of panic building in my ribs. When he finally came back, he didn't have to say anything. They're taking you off the case, I said flatly. He didn't deny it. You should let them, I muttered. I'm too much trouble, too dangerous. I'm not even... Kai? It was soft, but sharp enough to cut through every word. He stepped closer. Because of me, I whispered, you're losing your job. His expression changed. Not anger. Something gentler. Sadder. I'm losing nothing, he said. I'd lose something if I lost you. Heat crawled up my throat. Royce. He shook his head. I would rather lose a job, he said quietly, than lose a person. My breath caught, not because of the word person, but because he meant it. Every syllable. And for the first time since we'd met again, the fear in my chest loosened. Just a little. But enough to feel like the beginning of something dangerous. And real. Royce didn't take me back to the apartment. Instead, he drove across the city to a quieter district. Older buildings, narrow streets, small shops with faded signs. The kind of neighborhood where the world slowed down enough to breathe. He stopped in front of a modest brick building with peeling paint and an overgrown flower box under one window. This place looks... I tilted my head. Like someone's grandma decorated it in the 80s. Royce didn't rise to the jab. He just unlocked the door and nodded for me to enter. Inside, the air was warm, soft with dust and the faint scent of old books. The wallpaper was yellowed, patterned with tiny faded flowers. A small hallway opened into a cozy living room with mismatched furniture and a knitted blanket thrown over the couch. It felt lived in. Not perfect. Not sterile. Real. I blinked. This is definitely not yours. It is. He walked past me, shrugging off his jacket. I grew up here. I stared. You grew up here? He nodded once. You, I said, waving a hand at the small kitchen with the chipped tiles and the squeaky cabinet doors. Mr. Tactical Operations Manual lived in a place with doily curtains? His mouth tightened in something that might have been annoyance. Or fondness. Hard to tell with him. I still come here, he said quietly. When I want to feel human. The words caught me off guard. He said them like a confession. Like something he hadn't told anyone in years. I looked around the room differently then. As if it was a secret he was letting me see. We settled in with little conversation. Royce reheated leftovers in a creaking microwave, and we ate at the tiny kitchen table, knees almost brushing. It was mundane in a way nothing in my life had been for a long time. Later, when the sky outside had gone dark and the city's hum softened to a distant murmur, we moved into the living room. I curled up at one end of the couch, he sat at the other. The only light came from a small lamp on the side table, casting a warm, gentle glow. I didn't want to talk, but silence pressed too heavy against my ribs. So I asked the question that had been scratching at the inside of my skull for days. Why don't you push me? Royce looked at me. Really looked. What do you mean? You know exactly what I mean. I swallowed hard. You're an alpha. Most would have tried to dominate or force a link or something. He exhaled, leaning back. Because you're not someone who can be held, he said softly. And if I tried, I'd lose you the moment you felt it. The words hit harder than they should have. I looked down at my hands. Maybe I want you to, I whispered before I could stop myself. But when I lifted my eyes, he wasn't moving toward me. He wasn't claiming or demanding or even reaching out. He was just sitting there, breathing slowly, like he was afraid of startling me. That's when it happened. The impulse, sudden, sharp, confusing, to lean closer. To touch him. To close the distance the way my body was supposed to know how. To kiss him. I leaned in a fraction. Just enough that he noticed. His pupils widened. His lips parted slightly. And yet, nothing. No instinct pulling me forward. No heat flooding my veins. No bond reactive rush. Just emptiness. A void where something should have been. The realization cracked something inside my chest. Kai? Royce murmured. The tears came before I could stop them. Silent at first, then shaking through me like a tremor. I turned away, hiding my face in my hands, furious at myself for being weak, for wanting something my body physically couldn't do anymore. Royce didn't touch me immediately. He waited, like he always did. When I finally choked out a breath, he shifted closer, slow enough that I could stop him if I needed to. I didn't. His hand rested on the couch near mine, not touching, just offering. I stared at it through blurred vision. Then, before I could think or regret it, I placed my hand on top of his. His fingers tightened around mine. It wasn't instinct. It wasn't bond. It wasn't obedience. It was choice. And when he exhaled, a soft, shuddering breath, I realized something terrifying in its simplicity. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone in the void. It happened fast. One moment I was in Royce's childhood apartment, half asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of cinnamon and old books. The next, darkness. Not unconsciousness, not pain. Just nothing, like someone pressed mute on the world. I opened my eyes to hands grabbing me, gloved and precise, moving with a calmness that sent panic sharpening through my veins. Someone pressed a cloth to my mouth, a chemical bite hit the back of my throat, and everything blurred. But not before I managed to sweep my fingernails across the wooden floor, carving a jagged line into it. A mark. A message. For him. When I woke, I knew exactly where I was. I didn't recognize the specific place, but I knew the kind of place. Steel cold against my arms. The hum of electricity. The sterile scent of disinfectant mixed with metal. A laboratory. A new one. Bigger, deeper underground. Stronger straps held my wrists and ankles to a tilted metal table. A thin choking band circled my throat. A dozen cables and sensors clung to my skin, reading signals I no longer felt. My pulse should have spiked. My breathing should have quickened. But the drugs in my system muted everything. My mind slowed, drifting like fog. Voices floated in and out. Subject 04K reacquired. Prepare for null sequence integration. Stabilize mental output. More white coats. More faces behind masks. More hands treating me like a file number instead of a person. I tried to move. My fingers twitched. Someone pressed a button. The world slipped sideways. Colors smearing, sounds warping into underwater echoes. Someone spoke near my ear. Don't worry. You won't feel a thing this time. But I did feel. I felt something burning under my sternum. The single stubborn ember of instinct they hadn't managed to extinguish completely. Run. Find him. Don't disappear again. My body didn't cooperate. It stayed still, locked in a mechanical calm. Exactly like they wanted. I didn't see what Royce did to get to me. I only learned about it later, in fragments, in reports I wasn't supposed to read, in the way his body moved like every muscle still remembered the fight. But even without the details, I could imagine it. He'd find the scratch on the floor the moment he stepped into the apartment. A crude line. Crooked. Desperate. Mine. He'd follow the direction of the mark to the window, down the fire escape, into the alley. He'd smell the trace of chemicals on the air even if I couldn't anymore. Realize exactly what kind of clean, efficient disappearance this was. He wouldn't call backup. Wouldn't wait for permission. He never did when it came to me. He'd track the van to the industrial district on the outskirts. Dead warehouses, broken windows, rusting metal. He'd find the hidden freight elevator, force it open, ride it down into the dark. And then he'd move the way he'd taught me to move years ago. Silent, focused, efficient. Every technique he'd drilled into me living in his muscles now as he slipped through that underground complex. By the time he reached the core of the facility, his sleeves would be dark with other people's blood. I didn't see any of that. What I did see was the moment the door to my room hissed open. A harsh white light flooded in, cutting across the lab. My vision swam, but a silhouette stepped out of the glare. Broad shoulders. Familiar stance, chaos clinging to him like a second jacket. Royce. He was covered in blood that wasn't his, streaked across his jaw and soaking his shirt. His chest heaved from exertion. He looked terrifying. And familiar. The system running through my veins twisted that familiarity into something jagged. I smiled at him. A slow, strange curve of my lips. Too sharp. Who are you? I asked. Voice dull. Drug softened. I had never seen fear in his eyes like that before. Not for himself. For me. He stepped closer, ignoring the scientists who'd scrambled behind reinforced glass. It's me, he said softly. Kai, look at me. I tilted my head, studying him like a puzzle. Then I laughed. Low. Wrong. Nice try, I said. But I didn't choose you. He flinched. The words didn't feel like mine, not really. They had the metallic taste of something planted. Something fed into me by the null system trying to rewrite the narrative. Royce's jaw clenched. You did, he said, voice rough. You chose me every time you ran, every time you fought, every time you came back. His hand hovered near my face, not touching. I'm the one you called for in your sleep, he went on. The one you scratched a message for on the floor. Something cracked in my skull. Like the lights flickered internally. He leaned in, forehead almost but not quite touching mine. I'm the one you chose, he whispered. Even when you couldn't smell me. Even when they stole everything else. You still chose me. The room wavered. Memory sliced through the fog. Warm hands. A quiet kitchen. A soft blush. My fingers on his cheek in the dark. My breath hitched. Machines connected to my chest beeped erratically. Someone behind the glass shouted, "He's destabilizing!" Royce ignored them. Kai, he said, the softest version of my name. The one he almost never used. Come back. Something shattered. And power surged through my limbs. I didn't bend the restraints. I broke them. Metal snapped like bone. Sensors ripped from my skin. The band at my throat choked once, then tore. My legs buckled under the shock of adrenaline. I forced myself upright anyway. Arms trembling violently, lungs dragging in air. That tasted like chemicals and fear and the fading ghost of their control. And I took a step. Toward him. Royce caught me before I fell. My forehead hit his shoulder, breath coming in ragged pulls, my whole body shaking from the overload. I knew you'd come back, he murmured. And for the first time, instinct or not, bond or not, I believed him. The alarms were the first things to die. One moment the underground complex pulsed with cold red light and blaring. Warnings the next. The power grid shuddered, flickered, and went dark. Emergency doors hissed open or jammed. Somewhere far down the hallway, a scientist screamed and fled. Royce kept one arm around me as we moved, steadying me when my legs threatened to give out. The drugs still fogged my thoughts, but adrenaline and proximity kept me anchored. We passed a row of containment rooms. Behind reinforced glass, 6 Omegas blinked into consciousness, disoriented. Trembling, unsure whether we were real or just another hallucination. Royce didn't hesitate. He broke the first lock with a metal bar. I tore the next open with my bare hands. Or adrenaline, or fury, or something in between. Come on, Royce ordered them, voice low and firm. You're free, move. They followed. Still terrified. But moving. A guard rounded the corner, saw us, froze, then dropped his weapon and sprinted in the opposite direction. The whole system was collapsing. Good. We climbed the final set of stairs to the surface, the door above us bent from the earlier power surge. Royce pushed it open with his shoulder. A pale wash of early morning light spilled over us. The world outside was damp and cool, the asphalt still wet from a night of rain. The sunrise painted the sky in soft oranges and pinks, a gentler palette than anything I believed existed underground. The other Omegas scattered into the waking city, disappearing into streets and alleys. Not ready to trust, but ready to run. I didn't blame them. Royce turned to me. You okay? He asked. I nodded. For the first time I wasn't lying. As he guided me away from the warehouse, my hand drifted toward his. Without thought, without instinct, without any manipulation of biology, I laced our fingers together. His breath caught. Not because he expected it. Because he didn't. I squeezed lightly. Don't make it weird, I murmured. He almost smiled. Never. We walked that way through the quiet streets as the city woke, hand in hand. Not because of nature or design or forced connection, but because I wanted to. Back at the childhood apartment, Royce settled me onto the couch and wrapped a worn knitted blanket around my shoulders. The same one that had rested there since before I was born, probably. He moved around the small kitchen, making tea with the careful, slow movements of someone trying to focus on anything except the pounding in his chest. I didn't look away from him. Not this time. When he brought the mug over, steam curling upward, I accepted it with a quiet thanks and tucked my legs beneath me. We sat in silence. Not the heavy, aching silence of earlier days. A soft, warm one. A silence that felt like breathing after drowning. I sipped the tea, too strong, slightly bitter, and let the warmth settle through me. Royce, I said finally. He looked up. If I can't belong to anyone. I shifted the mug between my hands. Can I choose? His eyes softened. That's how it should be, he said. Always. My throat tightened, but not with fear. With something gentler. Something I thought had been severed in that lab forever. I set the mug aside. Shifted closer on the couch. Then. I swallowed. I choose you. His eyes widened just slightly. The most unguarded I'd ever seen him. I leaned forward and kissed him. Soft. Barely there. A brush of lips. Not instinct. Not biology. Not something forced or programmed or stolen. Just choice. Just me. Just him. When I pulled back, his hand rose, slow, tentative, to cup the side of my jaw. Thumb brushing my skin like he was afraid I'd break if he pressed too hard. Kai, he whispered. I rested my forehead against his. I'm free now, I said quietly. And that means I can love whoever I want. I closed my eyes. And that makes me stronger than any instinct they tried to erase. Royce exhaled a shaky breath, one that sounded dangerously close to relief. I opened my eyes and smiled at him. For the first time I said, freedom feels like something I want to keep. And in the tiny living room of his imperfect human home, with dawn warming, the window and his hand steady on my cheek, I finally believed it.